Hello and welcome to AutoFocus. That's a logo that's familiar, right? You must have seen it. It's been on millions of cars on Indian roads. That is brand Hyundai, and that brand is going to be completely repositioned with this car, a car that has the potential to actually blow your mind in terms of its design, in terms of its performance, in terms of its positioning, and it's going to completely reshape what you thought brand Hyundai is capable of. I am not trying to mimic Shah Rukh Khan and the way he posed next to the IONIQ 5 at the Auto Expo, but what I'm trying to do here is to give you perspective about how big this car actually is. The IONIQ 5 looks deceptively small in the frames, in pictures, but it's actually a fairly large car. It's 4.6 meters long, its wheelbase is about 3 meters, and it's a fairly wide vehicle. It looks in pictures like a hatchback, but it actually is genuinely the proportions of a low-slung SUV. And that is a key factor in giving it its appeal. A lot of that size and that presence coming from that size sort of dimensions, and that is why this car can actually fit your bill if you're looking for a spacious cabin, if you're looking for a vehicle with great road presence, and if you're looking for a vehicle that can fit a lot of the other things that you might want to put in the cabin. So the IONIQ 5 and its design is very unique. I absolutely must admit I'm in love with this design, more because of the way that it is following minimalist principles. It still looks striking, it still has great presence, very European retro modern flavor, all of that coming through from clean surfacing, very tight shut lines, and those matrix sort of headlamps, those what Hyundai calls parametric pixel headlamps. The headlamps themselves, the individual LED elements themselves are tight, are very cuboid and almost like, you know, an animated game. The front side clean, flush, it's very symmetric as you can see, and of course the central line almost cutting the IONIQ 5 in half, and very intelligently used to put and install some of the ADAS equipment like radars and lidars and cameras. And this whole front side of course is captured with this clamshell bonnet, which completely hugs the sides and is one singular unit. Those creases running clean. Now if you were to go to the side, one of the first things that captures your eye of course is that 20-inch alloys that they are, and those alloys themselves are striking and extremely beautiful to look at. 20 inches can be an issue if you might want to consider in the Indian context, but what Hyundai has done of course is to give it a laden ground clearance of 163 mm. Now that apparently is the tallest ground clearance for any vehicle in this segment. Now that is a ground clearance that has been raised almost 10 mm for India. It is probably a little higher right now because it has no weight inside the car, and of course the battery pack is positioned under the floor right there. But again, from the side, tight shut lines, clean profile, very sharp set of creases that run across for the waistline and the character line, merging at this point in the front door, all of which has these lines look almost like they have very singular purpose. Retractable door handles, and that is something that you will find even better while the car is in motion. So that is the IONIQ 5's rear side, and as you can see, it sort of mimics that front panel that we saw connecting the two headlamps. Here the panels again have this parametric pixel line of LEDs. The tail lamp itself, very simplistic, captures your attention immediately, even though they are a little subtle. That thin, nice stripe of LED, again capturing the width of rear, and this is a classic SUV rear tailgate, capturing that sort of size and width very well. The IONIQ 5 lettering in embossed white, also giving it that unique profile. One of the aspects that I didn't touch upon earlier is the fact that it gets a lot of aerodynamism right from its design and the surfacing and the way it's been, you know, carefully sculpted. But one of the other aspects that add to that bit of aerodynamics is the flaps that you see here. These flaps in the front behave like air intakes. These are active air flaps, as Hyundai calls them, and it opens out both in order to cool the battery pack and in order to provide for better aerodynamics. And that there again is a good feature, especially considering that the battery pack in Indian conditions might need higher cooling. Now, the other thing about the IONIQ that I need to stress upon is the fact that its wheelbase is one of the longest amongst all Hyundai cars, and that is something that is going to eventually deliver more space in the cabin. That's where we are headed into. Come on, let's go and check out what the cabin has to offer and how it looks from behind the wheel. So here we are behind the wheel of the new Hyundai IONIQ 5, and I must tell you, I'm loving the cabin too, just like the exterior design. That whole minimalist principle has been carried into the cabin, and the dashboard layout, the way the seats have been configured, door panels, this simple surfacing and yet very elegant design comes through very nicely. And this 2-spoke steering wheel, great to hold, very sporty flat bottom configuration for the steering wheel, all the controls within reach. One of the key factors that makes this cabin special is the whole sustainability issue that has been highlighted, that has been brought into the cabin. Lots of stuff that you see here are sustainable materials. A lot of the fabric has been constructed from out of plastic bottles that have been recycled. The paperette here comes from HDPE that has been recycled again. The leatherette seats, they are perforated and ventilated and heated. They are also stuff that have been cured using flaxseed oil. A lot of the stuff that has gone in genuinely is sustainable material. It does come up with this question in your mind as to why some of this could not have been adopted in a petrol car too. Why are many of these car makers thinking about sustainability and going eco-friendly only when it comes to an electric? That aside, I must say I'm absolutely loving the cabin. The layout is clean, panels are great, surfacing is superb, and no panel gaps or finishes that are raw or stand out as being a little off the mark. Lots of practicality too. For example, this center console can be moved forward and rear, and so you get a lot of flexibility in terms of you being able to use it the way you would like to. Flat floor, so that again means then you can cross over from one door to the other, a fact that a lot of Indians might actually like, because in the Indian context, parking in tight spaces can mean that you might have to jump off from the other side, and that's going to be a great help with this flat floor. Some of the features inside the cabin that I would like to talk about, of course there's a lot more tech and stuff like that we will deal with, but right now I was talking about the simple, intuitive features that actually give this IONIQ 5 cabin a lot more usability. One of them is this simple, elegant and very usable pull-out tray style glove box. Now, why is this something that people didn't think of before? This seems so convenient and so intuitive. Same is the case with this sort of moon roof. It's a glass roof that you get, it's fixed. It gets a fabric roof cover. You use the sunroof controller to move the fabric away, and then it brings in a lot of light and a lot of sort of freshness to the cabin. You must remember, like I said, this is nearly a 3-meter wheelbase, which then means the amount of space in the cabin is pretty humongous for a car of this size. And that is the reason why there's a lot of flexibility with the seats too. You can quite literally move the seat all the way back and nearly get business class cabin style, seat, both for the driver and for the passenger. There's electrical controls available for the rear seat too, and there are controls available on the front seat backrest, which you can then use to quickly move the front seat forward if you want to make a exit from the rear. Now, that is the kind of cabin space that you're getting with the IONIQ 5, and that is a highlight that is going to be appreciated by a lot of buyers in this segment. So Hyundai calls the cabin color theme as dark pebble grey. That's what the interior color is called. The layout is flush, like I said, a simple 12.3-inch digital cluster, nicely positioned, gives you all the information that you need. The powertrain itself gets 3 drive modes: Eco, Normal and Sport. There is a sense of much improved torque delivery while you are in Sport mode. The steering wheel also seems to firm up a bit, and there is much better control going through corners in Sport mode. But like I said, this is still very short test drive that we managed today. And from that perspective, we would need to drive the car a little more to get a sense of how it performs on the road in different conditions. In terms of safety features, the IONIQ 5 gets 6 airbags, it gets electronic stability control and vehicle stability management, hill assist, multi-collision avoidance brake, parking assist, power child lock, including the possibility of the power child lock being automatically engaged if there is oncoming traffic and you're going to try to open the door, which I thought was a very interesting feature. Then, of course, there is a virtual engine sound system, which in my view is quite insignificant and insufficient in my view. There is no compensating the advantage of an engine noise coming in from under the bonnet. The IONIQ 5 is also pretty highly kitted out with radar, lidar and camera assistance for delivering a range of advanced driver assistance systems. Lots and lots of usable features like forward collision warning, forward collision avoidance assistance, blind spot collision warning and avoidance, lane keeping assist, lane departure warning, driver attention warning, and a safe exit warning, which I was just mentioning a little while ago. Is all of these features very, very usable in the Indian context too, though yes, you might find them more useful and often being engaged while you're on a good 4-lane highway, quite a few of which is coming up around the country. So what does the IONIQ 5 get in terms of its powertrain, its electric powertrain? Let's take a look at what's under the bonnet though first. And what I must tell you is that it does not get any of its major components up in the front. Instead, what it gets is a 57-liter frunk. So you can literally, quite literally, use this as storage in case you want to put a small piece of luggage here or some knickknacks. You can put all of that here. Aside of that, it gets a few of the cooling components and some of the other battery components and controls here. But the main juice supplying battery pack itself is right underneath the floor of the IONIQ 5, and what you get there is a liquid cooled lithium ion battery pack that is 72.6 kilowatt hour capacity, and that sends its charge and power to a permanent magnet synchronous motor that sits right there beneath the rear seat and delivering a total output of about 217 PS and 350 Newton meters of torque. The entire system is capable of delivering an ARAA rated kilometer range of about 631 kilometers. I'm sure real world driving range is going to be lesser, but it does give you a lot of confidence in terms of the amount of range that it can offer you. Range anxiety really shouldn't be that bad. Even with a mix of driving styles and driving conditions, you should be able to get about 350 to 400 kilometers plus, again depending on your driving style. Now that is what the powertrain delivers, and in terms of drivability on the roads today, while we were driving down some of the narrow streets of Goa and on some short stretches of the highway, I must tell you that it feels very smooth. It does feel a little uneasy when you are too used to driving an ICE vehicle and then you switch to electric, where that extreme quietness in the cabin is a little unsettling at first, but then you quickly get used to it. And the suspension is a nice mix of firm and pliant. Of course, a lot of the confidence while you drive coming from that low CG that the battery pack delivers, positioned the way it is in most EVs. This is a skateboard platform, and it's the eGMP, the electric global modular platform of Hyundai, which then means that that battery pack is positioned the way it is. Now, the overall suspension quality is a nice balance, like I said. Going over the speed breakers, going over the bad patches, all of that taken very on its stride and very easily. That then is the IONIQ 5. We've just finished driving the car back into the property where we took it out from. This is not genuinely a full-blown test drive, I would call it. There is always a need to drive more to understand the car at hand. That said, there is a good mix of highway and narrow city streets through which we drove the IONIQ 5 in Goa. This is a average driving condition for most Indian cities, and from that perspective, yes, you do get a strong level of feedback about the car when you're behind the wheel. This then is a car that an electric that you should consider if you are in the market for an electric, or even if you were considering remotely an electric sometime in the near future. At about 45 lakhs, you get a lot with this IONIQ 5 compared to a lot of other ICE vehicles in that same price range. Every single luxury car out there has its entry segment vehicle, often with its lowest trim at this price point. And at this price point, you're getting a very plush, very European, very good looking electric from Hyundai. If you were to have thought of the brand as being incapable of handling a price point like this, you would be surprised with the IONIQ 5, and that's why I want to urge you to go and try out this car and genuinely try to come to terms with what it has to offer. I am absolutely loving this car at its price point too. It's a great price. You must remember, electrics often are not going to cost you any much more than what their ex-showroom price is. So what you might end up with after you pick this car would still be a price point of about 45 lakhs. Of course, Hyundai has said that this will be an introductory price and it's likely to be revised sometime in the near future. But for now, if you are in the market for an electric and you are or even considering to upgrade, this is what you should drive to come to understand and possibly make your booking.